Hey guys, tonight we wander into the whimsical world where divine accidents and music collide, where the Greek god Apollo, a patron of light and arts, somehow stumbles on what would become one of the most beloved instruments ever, the flute. Picture this: the sun is just peeking over the horizon, bathing the world in soft golden light, and you find yourself standing beside Apollo. He's not the poised, majestic god you've seen on statues or movie posters. No, he's a bit scruffy this morning, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, and in a rather mischievous mood. You watch as he fumbles with a handful of leaves, blowing into them with an almost childlike curiosity, trying to make a sound. A few pathetic whistles, a couple of sputters, and a lot of laughter fill the quiet morning air. If you didn't know better, you might think he was just goofing around, because that's exactly what he is. You probably won't survive this next fact without smiling. Even gods have off days, where great inventions are made by accident rather than by grand design. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing how this story travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So, here you are, walking side by side with Apollo as he stretches his limbs, yawning in the fresh dawn air. The world around you is still waking up. The scent of pine needles mingles with the faint sweetness of wildflowers, and somewhere a brook burbles lazily. Apollo's eyes dart about with the kind of restless energy only a god with nothing urgent on his agenda can muster. Apollo, as you might already know, is the god of the sun, poetry, prophecy, and most importantly for us tonight, music. You might think of him as this flawless, somewhat intimidating figure, but early in the day, before the world expects his divine perfection, he's much more approachable, curious, playful, and yes, a little bit clumsy. He fiddles with a stick, tapping it rhythmically against a stone, trying to coax a beat out of the silence. The sound is more tap dance on a rock than music, but hey, you're impressed. Historians still argue whether Apollo's musical gifts were purely divine or inspired by mortal creativity, but what's clear is that music wasn't just a hobby, it was a vital form of expression, a bridge between gods and humans. Tonight, you're lucky enough to witness an early chapter in that story, one that's not written down in grand epics or polished myths, but whispered among the leaves and streams. Apollo's fingers dance along the stick now, attempting something like a rhythm, but you can tell he's not satisfied. He tosses the stick aside and catches his breath, eyes twinkling with mischief. Suddenly, he picks up a slender reed growing nearby, one that's hollow and fragile. He raises it to his lips and blows. The sound is weak at first, a wobbly note that reminds you of blowing through a straw, but something in that awkward whistle catches your attention. It's the kind of sound that makes you tilt your head, curious about what comes next. There's a magic in this moment, a hint that something new is forming. Not the perfection of a lyre or the grandeur of a harp, but a simple, humble sound born from nature itself. This is not a god shaping music with power, but a playful being discovering it by accident. The kind of discovery you can't plan for, like finding a forgotten song on the back of your mind. And maybe, just maybe, you think you're witnessing the birth of the flute. You can almost feel the pulse of the day starting to beat faster around you. The birds begin their morning songs, the wind picks up softly, and the forest seems to lean in closer. Apollo grins, pleased by the sound, and gestures for you to follow as he steps deeper into the laurel grove nearby. Laurel trees, sacred to him, stand tall, their leaves rustling gently like a crowd whispering secrets. The grove is cool and shaded, the air thick with the scent of wood and earth. You notice how the sunlight dapples through the leaves, creating little golden patches on the mossy ground. It feels like stepping into a different world, a secret realm where gods and nature mingle freely. Apollo moves with light steps, his fingers brushing against the trees, occasionally plucking a loose twig or a slender branch. As you walk, you get the sense that the story about to unfold isn't just about invention. It's about curiosity, patience, and a little bit of divine accident. Apollo is about to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary, but he doesn't know it yet. And just like that, a sharp snap breaks the stillness. A twig fractures beneath Apollo's foot, and you both pause. The sound is crisp and startling, a little like a small firecracker. But then something surprising happens. From that broken twig, a brief whistle escapes, carried by the breeze. It's not music, not yet, but it's a sound that makes you lean in, curious. That snap, that accidental note, is the spark. The moment when something simple turns into something magical. As you watch Apollo's face light up with interest, you realize the story of the flute has begun, and you're right there for every breath and whistle of it. You follow Apollo closely, still intrigued by that unexpected whistle from the snapped twig. It wasn't music, not in any formal sense, but it carried a certain charm, like when you accidentally hum a tune and realize it might actually work. Apollo's eyes gleam with that mischievous spark again, the same one you caught earlier when he blew into the reed. This god isn't just toying with sound, he's exploring its very essence. And tonight, you're the lucky audience to this unpolished concert. Apollo's fascination with music is legendary, right? The god is often shown with his golden lyre, strings made from the guts of a giant turtle, or so myth goes. It's an instrument crafted with divine artistry and power. But here, away from temples and grand performances, you see a different side of him, a side that plays with the raw materials of sound itself. You might be surprised to know that in classical Greek culture, music was considered a fundamental part of education and even ethics. Socrates, for instance, believed music could shape the soul and character. So Apollo's playful experiments with sound aren't just random, they echo a deep cultural respect for music as something that can elevate both gods and mortals. And speaking of experiments, Apollo picks up a handful of hollow reeds growing by the grove's edge. They're slender and light, almost fragile. You watch as he holds one to his lips and blows again, but this time he's more deliberate, trying to control the air's flow. The sound is tentative, a soft, breathy note that wavers like a shy bird testing its wings. The reed hums, and you're mesmerized by the simplicity of it all. No fancy strings or complex construction, just nature's own pipes and the breath of a god. Historians still argue whether the earliest flutes were crafted deliberately or stumbled upon by accident, much like what you're witnessing. Some suggest that prehistoric humans might have noticed how blowing across hollow bones or reeds produced sounds, and that this realization gradually developed into the instrument we now call the flute. It's a fascinating debate, because it highlights the blurry line between invention and discovery, between art and accident. You can't help but wonder, did Apollo's playful blowing mirror some ancient human curiosity? Or was he the spark that inspired mortals to take up the flute? The answer might be lost to time, but for now, you bask in the mystery. As Apollo experiments, you notice how he shifts the reed's angle, altering the sound from a high, thin whistle to a deeper, richer note. It's almost like he's learning the flute's language, an intimate dialogue between breath and hollow wood. And then, unexpectedly, a breeze rustles the leaves overhead, sending a chorus of soft whispers through the grove. You realize nature itself is joining in, adding texture and rhythm to Apollo's tentative melody. This merging of godly music and natural sound creates an impromptu orchestra, one where birds chirp along, and the wind's sigh becomes part of the harmony. On a more whimsical note, some fringe historians claim that flutes might have had even earlier origins, suggesting that the first ones were made not from reeds, but from the wing bones of prehistoric birds. Imagine a caveman looking at a bird's hollow bone and thinking, hey, this might make a nice whistle. It's a quirky idea, but it fits the theme of accidental invention perfectly. The flute story, after all, isn't just about Apollo, it's about humanity's ancient fascination with sound and the desire to communicate beyond words. You notice Apollo's mood shifting from playful curiosity to a more focused intensity. The god starts shaping his breath more precisely, trying to coax a melody from the simple reed. It's not quite music yet, but it's getting closer, a series of notes that might someday become a tune. There's something endearing about this process, this trial and error, especially when coming from a god who otherwise commands the sun and prophecy. Here, he's just like you or me, fumbling with an idea until it clicks. And here's a little secret. Apollo wasn't always the patron of music, you know. Early myths suggest he gained that title after defeating the satyr Marsyas in a musical contest, which itself is shrouded in mystery and debate. Some scholars still argue whether Marsyas represents a Greek local deity whose story was absorbed into Apollo's mythology. This rivalry hints at how music, power, and culture intertwine, with Apollo eventually symbolizing harmony and order, while Marsyas embodied wild, untamed creativity. It's a perfect backdrop to your current scene, where Apollo balances between playful discovery and divine mastery. As you continue your walk with him through the sacred laurel grove, you can almost hear the faint beginnings of a tune forming. It's awkward and uncertain, but it carries the weight of something new, something that will echo through history in ways neither of you can yet imagine. And so, the gift of music unfolds quietly in the dawn. A gift born from a snapped twig, a hollow reed, and a god's breath. You find yourself deeper in the laurel grove now, where sunlight filters through leaves like scattered coins, and the air smells faintly of pine resin and earth. It's a sacred place, especially for Apollo. He's often depicted wearing a wreath of laurel leaves, a symbol of victory and poetic inspiration. As you trudge alongside him, you realize this isn't just a random forest stroll. The grove holds a sort of divine magic, the kind that can turn an accidental whistle into something legendary. Apollo's eyes gleam as he moves carefully through the trees, his fingers trailing over bark and brushing aside branches. You catch the scent of crushed leaves as he bends down to examine a particular clump of reeds growing by the water's edge. These reeds aren't just plants, they're potential instruments waiting to be discovered, hidden in plain sight. He picks one up, testing its hollow stem with a gentle poke, then lifts it to his lips again. This time the sound is clearer, almost like a breathy sigh, a soft note that blends with the breeze. Historians still argue whether the mythic origins of the flute in Greek lore are entirely symbolic or rooted in actual early instruments used by ancient peoples. Some suggest the laurel grove setting represents the connection between music, poetry, and nature's rhythms. After all, laurel was sacred not only to Apollo but to the muses as well, the goddesses of artistic inspiration. So as you follow him, you get the feeling this grove is less a backdrop and more a character in the story, shaping the music that's about to be born. The atmosphere shifts when a gentle wind rustles through the leaves, carrying a faint, melodic whistle that seems to answer Apollo's own tentative notes. You pause, letting the sound wash over you. It's as if the grove itself is joining the music, adding an organic harmony to the raw sounds coming from that hollow reed. You might even catch a few birds chiming in, their chirps weaving through the melody like nature's own chorus. Quirky fact: some ancient flutes discovered by archaeologists were made from bird bones, their holes carefully drilled to create different pitches. It's a slightly eerie image, imagining early humans crafting instruments from the skeletons of birds, but it shows how resourceful and curious our ancestors were. The connection between the natural world and music runs deep, and the laurel grove feels like the perfect place for that connection to spark. Apollo's playful blowing into the reed turns more deliberate now. You watch as he experiments with different finger placements over the reed's holes, adjusting his breath to vary the pitch. It's not perfect, far from it, but there's an unmistakable joy in his tinkering. You catch yourself wondering if this is how the first real melodies were born, through trial, error, and sheer delight in the sound itself. This moment carries echoes of the ancient Greek belief that music was a cosmic force, a way to harmonize human existence with the universe. Pythagoras famously studied musical intervals and ratios, seeing music as the language of the cosmos. While Apollo's fiddling might not be about math, per se, his early flute-like notes hint at that divine order, a precursor to the sophisticated harmonies we now take for granted. Suddenly, the brittle reed slips from Apollo's fingers and falls to the forest floor with a soft plunk. He laughs, a genuine, carefree sound, and you can't help but smile. Despite being a god, he's not immune to the frustrations and failures that come with invention. The line between divine inspiration and stubborn trial and error feels thin here, tangled in leaves and sunlight. You recall that historians still debate whether Apollo himself invented the flute or simply popularized it among gods and mortals. Some myths credit Hermes with crafting the first aulos, a double, piped instrument similar to a flute, and stealing Apollo's cattle in the same breath. The stories blur together, mixing divine rivalry with the evolution of musical instruments. This ambiguity doesn't diminish Apollo's role, but rather enriches the tapestry of myth and history woven around the flute's origins. As you help Apollo retrieve the reed, you feel the grove's quiet embrace, like it's encouraging this nascent music to take root. The flute's story is growing here, in the broken twig's whistle, the hollow reed's breath, and the sacred laurel grove's whispered song. You realize that sometimes, the most enduring inventions begin not with grand intention, but with a moment of playful curiosity in a quiet forest. The sun climbs higher now, filtering through the laurel leaves in shimmering beams that dapple the soft forest floor. You breathe in the crisp, resinous air, feeling the pulse of the grove's ancient energy beneath your feet. Apollo, still clutching the slender reed, looks surprisingly focused, like a musician tuning his instrument for the first time, nervous but excited. It's a quiet scene, yet you sense it's charged with potential, as if the grove itself holds its breath, waiting for something remarkable. You watch as Apollo positions the reed just so, pursing his lips around it and blowing gently. This time, the sound isn't just a random whistle but a clear, sustained note that fills the space with a tentative melody. The vibration of the reed feels alive, and you realize this isn't just noise anymore, it's the beginning of music, shaped by breath, wood, and intention. Apollo's eyes close briefly, savoring the sound, and you can't help but share in the quiet joy of discovery. Mainstream history credits the aulos, a kind of double, reed instrument, as one of the earliest Greek wind instruments, often associated with Dionysian rites and wild celebrations. But what you're witnessing seems simpler, more primal: the solitary reed flute, a precursor to those later developments. Historians still argue whether the flute evolved independently in various ancient cultures, or whether it traveled through trade and conquest, adapting and changing as it went. Either way, this moment captures the essence of musical invention, curiosity meeting nature's gifts. The grove around you seems to respond. Leaves rustle gently in rhythm, and distant bird calls add a natural harmony that makes Apollo's flute note feel part of a greater symphony. You realize music, especially in its earliest forms, wasn't just entertainment. It was a way to connect with the world, with the divine, and with other humans. It's a language without words but with meaning, a bridge between the ordinary and the sacred. On a quirky note, some fringe researchers speculate that the flute's origins might also tie to ancient hunting rituals. The sounds produced could imitate bird calls or animal cries, serving to communicate or lure prey. Imagine early humans blowing into hollow bones, trying to mimic the forest's own melodies to blend in or trick their quarry. While this theory remains debated, it adds an intriguing layer to your understanding of why wind instruments might have been invented. Apollo shifts the reed again, experimenting with finger holes cut into the hollow stem. You watch as he covers and uncovers them, changing the pitch subtly but noticeably. It's a crude system, yet effective, a hint at the complex fingerings and techniques that flute players would refine over millennia. You wonder how many mornings of trial and error this discovery must have taken before anyone thought to fix those holes carefully or make the reeds sturdier. Then there's the curious fact that flutes are among the oldest known musical instruments ever found. Archaeologists have uncovered flutes made from bird bones and mammoth ivory dating back over 40,000 years. It's almost humbling to think that what you see Apollo fumbling with has such ancient echoes. A thread connecting gods, early humans, and you sitting here in this sacred grove, caught in the first breaths of music. The debate about whether Apollo truly invented the flute or if it was a human creation inspired by nature, and then attributed to gods, is ongoing. Myth often serves as a mirror, reflecting humanity's need to explain origins in ways that honor both the divine and the mortal. Apollo's playful experimentation with the reed captures that blend perfectly. A divine figure engaging with the natural world in a way that hints at invention without claiming it outright. You notice the sun climbing higher, warming the grove and encouraging life to stir. Apollo's lips part from the reed, and he laughs softly, the sound blending with the breeze and the faint rustle of leaves. It's a sound of delight, not perfection. A reminder that even gods invent through play, mistakes, and a bit of luck. As you stand beside him, you realize the flute's story is as much about human curiosity and nature's generosity as it is about divine inspiration. And here, in the heart of the laurel grove, the melody of creation hums quietly, waiting to be heard. The afternoon sun softens, casting long shadows that stretch like lazy fingers across the grove floor. You stroll beside Apollo, feeling the weight of the day settle into a peaceful rhythm, much like the tentative notes emerging from his reed flute. There's a gentle calm here, but also a quiet thrill. You're witnessing a moment that will ripple through history, even if no one outside this grove will know it for centuries. Apollo's hands move with growing confidence now, adjusting the reed's length and testing new finger holes with careful curiosity. You notice how the sound shifts, not just in pitch but in tone, from breathy and fragile to fuller and richer. It's as if the god is coaxing the instrument into singing, discovering how small changes create entirely new moods. The simple reed is transforming under his touch into something magical, something that can carry emotion and story. Historians still debate whether the earliest flutes were single pipes like this or double pipes, called oloi, which could play harmonies and more complex melodies. The aulos was famously used in Greek theatre and celebrations, often associated with Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry. But what you're seeing is something purer, simpler, a single voice emerging from nature's own materials, a proto-flute that hints at the rich musical traditions to come. The grove seems to respond to the music too. Leaves shimmer as a soft breeze weaves through the branches, and somewhere nearby, a bird echoes the tone, creating an impromptu duet. You realize this is how music first entered the world, through interaction with the environment, blending human breath and natural sound. It's a fragile balance, delicate and ephemeral, like a whispered secret passed between friends. On a quirky note, some scholars suggest that the earliest flutes might have been used not only for music, but for ritual purposes, perhaps to communicate with spirits or gods, or even to mimic the calls of animals for hunting or protection. This idea adds a fascinating layer to your story, the flute as a tool of magic and survival, not just art. It makes you wonder if Apollo's playful flute practice here doubles as a sacred rite, a way to bridge the mortal and divine worlds. Apollo's lips press again to the reed, and he blows a series of notes that rise and fall like a gentle wave. You hear the beginnings of a melody, not a tune, but one that feels timeless, like a lullaby whispered by the forest itself. It's not polished or perfect, but it holds promise, a seed of music waiting to grow. You recall the myth where Hermes invents the aulos, and then cunningly gives it to Apollo, creating a divine musical rivalry that echoes through Greek lore. Some historians still argue about the symbolism behind this story. Is it a metaphor for cultural exchange, or perhaps a reflection of competing musical traditions? Either way, it highlights how intertwined music, mythology, and human creativity really are. As you watch Apollo's fingers dance over the reed, shaping sound from breath and wood, you feel the pulse of invention thrumming quietly beneath the surface. This isn't just an accident or a whim, it's the birth of something enduring, a way for gods and mortals alike to speak without words. The light shifts again as the sun sinks lower, casting golden hues that seem to set the grove itself aglow. Apollo's laughter bubbles up, light and carefree, and you realize the music here isn't about perfection or fame. It's about joy, discovery, and the simple pleasure of making sound. And so, in this quiet laurel grove, you witness the first breath of the flute's long, winding journey. A story of nature, curiosity, and divine playfulness, all woven into a melody that will echo through time. The golden light of late afternoon fades slowly into a softer, cooler glow as the sun dips lower behind the distant hills. You stand beside Apollo in the laurel grove, where the rustle of leaves and the faint chirping of cicadas create a soothing symphony. The flute, the humble reed in his hands, now feels like a conduit for something far greater than itself. You sense the air thickening with the promise of invention, the kind of quiet magic that lingers just at the edge of awareness. Apollo's fingers move deftly, tracing new holes along the reed's length. Each change alters the melody subtly, like the first tentative steps of a dance. You notice how his breath modulates, sometimes steady and deep, other times light and playful, coaxing the instrument to sing in unexpected ways. It's not just sound anymore, it's expression, a nascent language shaped by wind and wood. The earliest archaeological flutes, carved from bone and ivory, have been found in caves across Europe and Asia, dating back tens of thousands of years. These instruments, unlike Apollo's single reed, often had multiple finger holes to play scales and melodies. Historians still argue whether such flutes were invented independently in different regions or spread through cultural exchange and migration. Either way, the universality of the flute's sound speaks to something deeply human, a desire to reach beyond silence. As you listen, a curious thought flutters through your mind. Some fringe theories propose that flutes were not just musical instruments, but tools of healing or meditation. Their soothing tones might have been used to calm the mind, soothe the sick, or even induce trance-like states. Imagine ancient shamans or priests playing the flute under starlit skies, weaving spells with their breath. This idea, while speculative, adds a mysterious dimension to Apollo's playful tinkering. You glance at Apollo's face, illuminated now by the soft twilight filtering through the laurel leaves. There's a concentration mixed with delight, like a child discovering a secret toy for the first time. He blows again, producing a clear note that lingers, hanging in the still air. The grove seems to listen, holding its breath. The interplay of mythology and history here is fascinating. Apollo, god of music, healing, and prophecy, embodies the multifaceted role of the flute. His instrument is not just for entertainment, but also a symbol of harmony and balance. Some myths even suggest that music played on the flute could tame wild beasts or charm the very elements, a reflection of the power attributed to sound itself. You recall an amusing tidbit: some ancient flutes had as many as 8 finger holes, but players could only reach 6 fingers at once, leading to all sorts of creative hand contortions. It's a reminder that invention often comes with practical challenges and a fair share of awkwardness. Apollo's early flute is no different, a prototype in the truest sense. As night approaches, the first stars begin to wink into existence, twinkling through gaps in the leaves. The grove's shadows deepen, wrapping you and Apollo in a gentle hush. His flute notes drift into the night, simple but profound. A lullaby from the gods, carried on the evening breeze. You realize the flute's invention wasn't a single, grand event, but a series of small discoveries and experiments, each note a step toward the music we know today. And as you stand there, bathed in fading light and soft sound, you feel privileged to witness that ancient spark. The coolness of evening settles over the laurel grove like a gentle blanket, wrapping everything in a quiet hush. You sit beside Apollo on a moss-covered stone, the fading light casting soft shadows that dance with the breeze. The reed flute rests between your fingers now, lighter than you expected, yet somehow alive with possibility. Every note Apollo plays seems to weave the grove sounds together, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, into a delicate symphony that feels both ancient and immediate. You realize that this moment, this interplay of breath and wood, is not just about music. It's a form of communication that predates language, a bridge between humans, gods, and the natural world. Apollo's flute is a storyteller, speaking without words, carrying emotions that are otherwise inexpressible. It's the first whisper of a language that will evolve into songs, poems, and legends. Historians still argue whether flutes were originally made for ritualistic purposes or simply for entertainment. Some suggest that early flutes, especially those found in archaeological sites near burial grounds, had a sacred role, perhaps guiding souls or honoring the dead. Others believe they were crafted simply because someone was curious what sounds could be made from a hollow tube. Whatever the truth, the dual nature of the flute as both art and ritual tool is a fascinating tension. On a quirky note, did you know that the oldest known playable flute was carved from the wing bone of a vulture? It was found in a cave in Germany and is believed to be over 40,000 years old. Just imagine an ancient human carefully drilling holes into a fragile bird bone, trying to coax music from it. Talk about dedication. It's a far cry from the sleek flutes you might see today, but it's a powerful reminder of how deep our musical roots go. As you watch Apollo continue to experiment, you notice he sometimes pauses, listening intently to the echoes bouncing through the grove. It's almost as if he's tuning not just the flute, but the environment itself. The interaction between instrument and space fascinates you. Music isn't just notes, but the way those notes interact with the world around them. This sensitivity to soundscape will become a cornerstone of musical tradition. You recall the myth that credits Hermes with creating the first aulos by stealing Apollo's cattle and fashioning the instrument from a tortoise shell and reeds. This playful divine rivalry might reflect real historical exchanges, music evolving through borrowing, innovation, and competition. The stories blur myth and reality, making it hard to say where one ends and the other begins. Historians still debate whether these myths mask the true origins or celebrate the cultural importance of music itself. As twilight deepens, you feel a soothing calm wash over the grove. The flute's soft melody mingles with the chirping crickets and the rustle of branches, a lullaby for the earth as night takes hold. You think about how this tiny reed flute, born from accident and curiosity, will eventually find its way into ceremonies, theatres, and even everyday life, transforming not only sound but culture itself. The grove seems to breathe with you, the music and nature entwined in a timeless dance. You feel a gentle gratitude for this moment, a rare glimpse into the beginnings of an art form that will resonate through millennia. Night deepens around you, the grove wrapped in a thick velvet darkness, pierced only by the silver light of stars peeking through the canopy. The cool air carries the scent of damp earth and pine, mingling with the faint sweetness of blooming night flowers. Apollo's flute has quieted now, leaving a soft, lingering echo that seems to pulse in the stillness like a heartbeat. You sit beside him, feeling the magic of this moment, the intersection of nature, music, and myth. The moon rises slowly, casting a gentle glow that illuminates the contours of the laurel leaves. Apollo picks up the flute again, blowing a low, haunting note that rolls through the grove like a whispered secret. The sound is raw and intimate, as if the instrument itself is breathing alongside you both. You realize that the flute, in its simplicity, is uniquely suited to the night, its soft timbre blending with shadows, inviting reflection and calm. Historians still argue about the social role of early musical instruments like the flute. Some propose that music was primarily a communal activity, used to strengthen bonds and coordinate group efforts, such as hunting or rituals. Others suggest a more personal use, private moments of meditation or emotional expression. The truth is likely a bit of both, reflecting the complex relationship humans have with sound. On a quirky note, in some ancient cultures, flutes were even thought to hold protective powers. There's a legend that certain melodies could ward off evil spirits or bad luck, making the flute not just an instrument but a talisman. Imagine early flute players doubling as both musicians and spiritual guardians, a role both charming and mysterious. As you listen, the grove feels alive with possibility. The rustling leaves almost seem to shimmer in response to the flute's song, and the distant hoot of an owl punctuates the melody like punctuation in a poem. It's as though the entire forest is participating in this first musical dialogue. You reflect on the connection between Apollo and music in Greek mythology. As god of the arts, healing, and prophecy, Apollo embodies the flute's power to soothe and inspire. Some myths even say his music could heal wounds or tame wild creatures. Whether literal or symbolic, these stories highlight the flute's deep roots in human culture and imagination. The night grows colder, and you feel a pleasant shiver run down your spine, not from chill, but from wonder. This small instrument, carved from a reed and played with breath and fingers, holds a universe of potential within its simple design. It's a perfect blend of nature and human creativity. You watch Apollo's silhouette framed against the moonlight as he plays again, this time a melody that feels like a gentle lullaby. The music drifts softly through the trees, a tender gift from the gods to the earth, a reminder of the power hidden in the humblest beginnings. The early hours stretch out quietly as you and Apollo remain in the grove, the night weaving its own slow rhythm around you. The world feels suspended, as if time has folded in on itself, leaving only the delicate interplay of breath and sound. The flute, once a simple reed, now sings softly with a clarity that feels almost otherworldly. You find yourself leaning into the music, the gentle notes wrapping around you like a comforting blanket. This moment invites reflection on how the flute's design evolved from such humble beginnings. Over time, more finger holes were added, allowing players to produce a wider range of notes and more complex melodies. The construction also shifted from natural reeds and bones to crafted wood and later metal. Historians still debate the precise timeline of these developments, but it's clear that the flute's journey from a simple pipe to a versatile instrument mirrors humanity's own growth in creativity and technical skill. You remember reading that in ancient Greece, the flute, or aulos, was not always the most respected instrument. Some philosophers criticized it as inducing madness or moral decay, while others praised its emotional power. This tension highlights the flute's complex role in society, capable of both delighting and disturbing its listeners. It's a reminder that music, like all art, walks a fine line between order and chaos. Here's a quirky tidbit: in some ancient cultures, players would blow into two pipes at once, creating a haunting harmony known as a double flute. This requires remarkable breath control and dexterity, something that probably made those early musicians the rock stars of their day. Imagine trying to keep a conversation going while playing two flutes at once. Talk about multitasking. Apollo, of course, remains the ultimate flute player in this tale. His mastery of breath and fingerwork seems effortless, but you know this moment comes after countless trials, errors, and experiments. You watch him close his eyes, lost in the music, as if the flute is an extension of his own soul. The mythology around Apollo emphasizes this intimate connection. Music as a divine gift and a channel for inspiration. As dawn's first light begins to pale the night sky, you feel a profound sense of awe. The flute's music, born from accident and curiosity, has transcended its origins to become a universal language. It carries emotion, memory, and culture across generations and continents. And here you are, at the very beginning, watching it unfold like a gentle whisper on the wind. You inhale the crisp morning air, filled with the scent of damp leaves and promise. The flute's last notes linger, fading slowly into silence as the grove awakens with the song of birds greeting the new day. The dawn stretches across the horizon like a slow yawn, bathing the grove in soft pastel light. You feel the cool dampness of morning dew on the grass beneath you as you sit quietly beside Apollo, who cradles the reed flute like a precious secret. The air hums with the freshness of a new day, carrying scents of pine, wet earth, and a faint hint of honey from nearby blossoms. It's a perfect setting for the next step in this unexpected journey of musical discovery. You watch as Apollo lifts the flute to his lips again, this time experimenting with different breathing techniques, short, sharp puffs and long, steady breaths that produce a variety of tones. He's learning how to control airflow to create dynamics, soft whispers of sound and louder, more commanding calls. It's the beginning of musical expression beyond simple notes, a step toward communicating emotion and story. Historians still argue whether early flutes were primarily solo instruments or often played alongside others in groups. Some archaeological findings suggest flutes were part of ensembles with percussion and string instruments, used in celebrations or rituals. This ensemble playing hints at the social role of music as a communal experience, a way to bring people together in shared feeling and purpose. On a quirky note, did you know that some ancient flutes were designed with multiple pipes connected to a single mouthpiece, allowing players to create chords and harmonies? These double or even triple pipes required incredible breath control and coordination, making those musicians the ultimate multitaskers of their time. Apollo's fingers move with growing confidence over the finger holes, his breath shaping the melody with newfound subtlety. You feel a gentle warmth spreading through the grove, as if the music itself is breathing life into the morning. The simplicity of the flute belays its power to evoke complex emotions, from joy to sorrow, peace to passion. You recall the stories that describe Apollo's musical contests with other gods and mortals, where his flute playing would captivate listeners or even win battles of skill. These myths may reflect real ancient competitions and performances, showing how music was a vital part of culture and identity. Historians still debate whether these contests were literal events or symbolic tales, emphasizing music's importance. As the sun rises higher, the grove fills with light and life. Birds chirp, insects buzz, and the gentle flutter of wings adds a natural percussion to Apollo's flute. The music becomes a dialogue, a call and response between the god and the world around him. You feel privileged to witness this moment of creation, the birth of a melody, the weaving of breath and reed into something timeless. The flute's journey, sparked by accident and nurtured by curiosity, continues to unfold with every note, every breath. The sun now bathes the grove in warm, golden light, casting long, lazy shadows that stretch between the ancient trees. You sit quietly, watching Apollo's fingers dance across the flute's finger holes with practiced ease. The melody he creates is no longer tentative or exploratory. It flows like a gentle stream, smooth and continuous, carrying you along in its current. You realize that what started as a curious accident has grown into a genuine art form. Apollo's flute playing seems to transform the entire grove. The rustling leaves take on a rhythmic quality, the chirping birds fall into harmony, and even the distant murmurs of the river sound like part of the composition. It's as if the forest itself becomes an orchestra, and Apollo, the conductor. You feel yourself drifting, lulled by the soothing waves of sound. Historians still debate the symbolic meanings attached to the flute in ancient cultures. Some argue it represented the voice of nature, or the divine breath of life, while others see it as a metaphor for human creativity and emotion. This ambiguity enriches the flute's story, adding layers of meaning that invite endless interpretation. Here's a quirky tidbit: in some regions, flutes were thought to carry the voices of ancestors or spirits. Playing certain melodies could summon their presence or wisdom. Imagine that, each note a bridge between worlds, a conversation across time. This idea adds a mystical glow to the humble instrument. As Apollo plays, you notice how he varies the rhythm and tempo, shifting from slow, contemplative phrases to lively, upbeat passages. The flute's voice seems to mirror his own mood, a reflection of the god's dual nature, both serene and fiery. This emotional depth is what makes music such a powerful language. You recall that in many ancient Greek rituals, music played on instruments like the flute was used to induce trance states or facilitate communication with the divine. The connection between sound, spirit, and consciousness is still explored by scholars today. Some even suggest that music therapy has roots in these earliest practices. The grove feels alive with energy, a place where myth and reality intertwine seamlessly. Apollo's flute singing is both a personal expression and a cosmic message, a reminder of the power that lies in simple things, like a reed, breath, and a little bit of curiosity. As the melody fades, a sense of peace settles over you. You are witness to something extraordinary, the birth of music's emotional soul, carried on the wings of a flute. The afternoon sun casts dappled light through the leaves, warming the grove in a comforting embrace. You sit beside Apollo, the reed flute resting gently in his hands, its surface smooth from hours of careful playing. The melody now carries the subtle complexity of a seasoned performer, weaving intricate patterns that hint at stories yet untold. You feel the pulse of the grove syncing with the music, a quiet harmony between nature and art. Apollo's mastery of the flute begins to inspire others in the nearby villages. Word spreads of the god's enchanting melodies, drawing curious listeners who gather in the grove, eager to hear the mysterious instrument that seems to channel the very essence of the earth. This communal sharing of music marks a turning point. The flute is no longer a solitary voice but part of a growing tradition. Historians still debate whether music was originally a sacred practice exclusive to priests and shamans, or a more democratic activity accessible to all. Archaeological findings suggest both. Some flutes are ornate and likely ceremonial, while others are simple and practical, indicating everyday use. This duality speaks to music's multifaceted role in human life. A quirky detail you might enjoy in some cultures: flutes were made with animal bones or shells, incorporating the spirit of the creature into the music. This practice created a powerful connection between the player, the instrument, and the natural world, almost like a musical totem. You imagine the reverence these instruments commanded. Apollo, ever the innovator, experiments with different materials, trying reeds from various plants, shaping the flute's length and width to alter its tone. Each variation brings a new voice, expanding the flute's expressive range. His relentless curiosity mirrors humanity's enduring quest to push creative boundaries. You remember the tale of Marsyas, the satyr who challenged Apollo to a musical contest and lost. Legend has it the price for his hubris was harsh. This myth reflects the deep respect and fear surrounding music's power, a theme that resonates across cultures and eras. Historians still discuss whether the story warns against arrogance or celebrates artistic excellence. The grove fills with the sound of multiple flutes, as villagers begin to mimic Apollo's playing, adding their own rhythms and melodies. Music becomes a shared experience, a way to connect, celebrate, and express identity. It's a beautiful evolution from solitary discovery to communal art. As the day wanes, you feel a deep satisfaction watching this transformation unfold. How an accidental invention grows to shape culture, emotion, and memory. The late afternoon light softens, casting long shadows and bathing the grove in a golden glow. You notice the air has shifted. A gentle hush settles over the crowd gathered around Apollo and his flute. Faces, both young and old, are illuminated with wonder and quiet awe. The music, once a personal experiment, has become a communal heartbeat, a language everyone seems to understand without words. This moment highlights how the flute's influence stretches beyond mere sound. It becomes a tool for storytelling, for transmitting myths and histories. Scholars still argue whether early musical storytelling was primarily oral poetry accompanied by instruments like the flute, or if it developed separately as a form of pure music. The truth is, the two likely intertwined, each enhancing the other. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient flutes had holes arranged to mimic the human voice's inflections, allowing players to sing melodies. This fascinating design shows early attempts to bridge music and speech, a precursor to modern singing techniques. Imagine trying to imitate a bird's call or a human phrase with just finger holes and breath. You watch as Apollo's music shifts tone, growing more narrative and expressive. It's as if the flute is speaking, telling tales of heroes, gods, and mortals. The melodies evoke laughter, sorrow, triumph, and quiet reflection, inviting listeners to journey through time and emotion. This storytelling power cements the flute's place in cultural rituals and celebrations. The idea of music as a narrative device is something historians continue to explore. Some suggest that early music helped preserve oral traditions long before writing was widespread, acting as a mnemonic device. Others see it as an independent art form that complements language rather than replicates it. The crowd around you sways gently to the rhythm, eyes closed or fixed on Apollo's hands. The sense of shared experience deepens. Music here is not just heard but felt, a connective tissue binding individuals into a community. You feel it too, a quiet warmth spreading through your chest. As the last notes drift into the evening air, a sense of reverence settles over the grove. The accidental invention of the flute has blossomed into a profound human expression, a voice that will echo through generations. You lean back against a tree, the day's music humming softly in your mind, ready for whatever comes next. The sun dips lower, the sky a canvas of pinks and purples as twilight enfolds the grove in a gentle embrace. You notice a subtle change in the air, music and silence merging into a delicate balance. Apollo's flute rests now, but its presence lingers like a soft glow, a promise of more stories yet to be told. The day's discoveries ripple through the grove, carried on the breath of evening. You reflect on the flute's journey from accident to art. It's fascinating how such a simple instrument, a hollow reed with holes, could wield such power. Historians still debate how the flute spread across cultures, whether it was independently invented in multiple places or traveled through trade and migration. What's clear is its universal appeal, transcending borders and time. A quirky fact to ponder: in some ancient societies, flutes were used in rituals to communicate with animals or nature spirits. The music was believed to mimic natural sounds, creating harmony between humans and the environment. You imagine early flute players as nature's diplomats, negotiating peace with a bird or calming a restless wind. Apollo's role as a cultural hero deepens here. Beyond his divine status, he represents human curiosity and creativity, qualities essential for innovation. The flute is a perfect metaphor, simple yet profound, accidental yet intentional, mundane yet magical. It shows how invention often arises from playful experimentation rather than grand design. You recall how the Greeks saw music as a cosmic force, influencing the harmony of the universe itself. Apollo's music was said to reflect the celestial order, aligning mortal and divine realms. This belief underscores the flute's significance not just as an instrument, but as a symbol of balance and connection. The grove grows quiet, save for the soft chirp of crickets and the whisper of leaves. The day's warmth fades, replaced by the cool breath of night. You feel a serene calm, a deep appreciation for this unexpected gift of sound. As you prepare to leave the grove, you carry with you the echoes of flute melodies, fragile threads weaving history, myth, and emotion into a single, beautiful tapestry. Night has fully settled now, and the grove is cloaked in a velvety darkness, punctuated only by the gentle twinkle of stars overhead. The air is cool and still, holding the faintest hint of jasmine and pine. You sit quietly beside Apollo, feeling the calm that only music and nature together can conjure. The flute, now resting in your hand, feels like a fragile thread connecting you to something far greater than yourself. The journey of this simple instrument has been winding and unpredictable, an accidental invention born of curiosity, play, and necessity. It's astonishing how such a small object could carry so much meaning, emotion, and history. Historians still debate the exact origins of the flute, but its impact across cultures is undeniable, making it one of humanity's oldest and most enduring musical voices. You think about the countless stories this flute will someday tell, the celebrations, the rituals, the quiet moments of reflection. Music is a timeless companion, a language beyond words that touches the soul directly. It's a reminder that creativity often springs from the most unexpected places, blossoming into something truly universal. Here's a quirky little reminder: despite the flute's ancient roots, it's still surprising how many different versions exist worldwide. From bamboo flutes in Asia to wooden pipes in Europe, and even simple bone flutes found in prehistoric caves. It's as if the idea of making music with breath and holes is a fundamental human impulse, rediscovered again and again. Apollo smiles softly, the glow of the stars reflected in his eyes. His music has become a bridge between gods and mortals, nature and culture, the past and the future. You feel privileged to have witnessed the first notes of this incredible legacy, woven quietly through time like a soft lullaby. As the night deepens, you tuck the flute safely away, carrying with you the gentle echo of its melody. The story of how Apollo accidentally invented the flute may be myth, but its magic is very real, a gift that continues to inspire and soothe.